I work in a call center, and one of my co-workers spoke to a woman and explained a thing to her. I forget the exact thing, like supposedly told her something would be covered and it wasn't, or something along those lines. The woman calls back, super angry, and escalates to a manager. Manager reviews the call and finds the woman was in fact told the correct thing. She's still angry and insisting she was told the wrong thing. Manager replies, "Are you sure? Are you 100% sure? Because I'm going to take you at your word, and if that's the case, employee will lose his job. Someone's going to be fired over this if you're certain that's what they told you." The woman did not give a shit and insisted she was told the wrong thing. Some people are scum. The manager didn't fire my coworker. She had proof he was correct. She just wanted to see how far this woman was willing to take her lie. That's the problem. They never back down. Not the child, but I think this fits. I had this awful, annoying as fuck, terrible neighbor who, because I'm a giant sucker, I was kind to. She asked me to come with her to dinner because it was her birthday, and I knew I was the only person on the planet who would go with her. And, gosh darn it, it's her birthday. How could I say no? So she and I went, and we brought our kids. All girls, one mine, two hers. She makes her oldest do her math homework right there at the table. When the child asks for her help, mind you, this is like 3rd grade math, the mum says it's too hard. I end up helping. The waiter is just fine. He comes by and takes our orders. She's already acting weird, but she always acted weird, so I didn't think much of it. Waiter comes by again and asks if we need anything. She dismisses him and waves him off and tells him no. Then, like 30 seconds later, turns to me and is like, "Can you believe how awful the waiter is? He won't even refill my drink," and just goes on about all these issues that literally don't exist. I'm like, "He just asked if you needed anything." She cuts me off. "I'm going to talk to the manager." Oh, God. She talks to the manager like this is the worst experience she's ever had in the history of her miserable existence. I'm in shock. Her kids have their heads down. Mine is oblivious. Lol. The manager gives her like half off the meal. Oh, and the kicker? "That's my half, so you only need to pay the rest." Oh, gee, thanks. I left a big tip and a note on my receipt telling them the waiter was great and apologizing for the complaints that were totally not warranted. It was the second most embarrassing restaurant experience of my life. The number of cashiers my father demanded the manager fire because they were too slow, rang us up wrong, etc., including one they actually did. I'll never forget that girl taking her Home Depot apron off and walking away sobbing. To his credit, I guess, my dad seemed surprised that it actually worked. Must have felt at least some level of guilt, and never did it again. I bet the reason he never did it again is because he suddenly empathized with the cashier. Up until that moment, he saw himself as the little guy, being pushed around by forces outside of his control, so he's pushing back as a kind of valiant, hopeless defense. But when he saw the cashier take off her apron and cry, he realized that she's being pushed around by forces outside of her control too, and that he's the one doing the pushing. It was probably a profound, life-changing realization for him. When I was a young child on a long-distance flight, my mother let me and my brother sleep on the floor. For safety reasons, the flight attendants told my mother that we were not allowed to sleep on the floor. She started to argue with the flight attendants, who then turned to the pilots. The pilots threatened to turn the plane around unless we get up off the floor, but she continued to argue. The pilots announced they were about to turn around because of my mother, so all the passengers got pissed. Eventually she caved in when she had all the passengers and flight crew of the Boeing 747 against her. We traveled a lot when we were younger, and would skip lines at the airport since we were kids. But now we were in our early teens, and my mum faked having a heart condition to skip the long line to get on the plane. Flight attendant was having none of it, and told us to go back to the end of the line. I still remember the smiles and looks of everyone there. I never understood this strange addiction to getting on the plane first. I like to spend as little time as possible in a cramped aluminium tube, surrounded by loud strangers bumping into you and trying to put their luggage in overhead bins. I wait at the f***ing gate until the end. It's not like you're gonna get a better seat, and then the same people are the ones rushing to get off first. I don't get it. My mum used to run restaurants. My stepfather used to be a chef in high-end restaurants, and is the kind of guy who expects to be treated better than he is currently being treated, regardless of whatever that treatment is. They are not fun to go out to eat with. The most embarrassing experience is actually their most embarrassing experience, one where I embarrassed them. My wife and I pride ourselves on being a relief table when we go out to eat. Both of us have been servers, and there's always the counterpoint to the difficult table. That's us. Barring horrible service or bad food, we're super easy customers, tip well, and try to have a good time with our server. Furthermore, we just treat people nicely. So you can imagine our disdain when my parents act like they're f***ing royalty at a dinner service. My wife and I went out to dinner with them. They were being particularly tough. My mum was acting like she was Gordon Ramsay, analysing the business, critiquing everything down to the amount of bubbles in her seltzer. Looks like it's time to change the CO2. My stepdad was getting more and more heated over stupid things like the amount of ice in his drink, and how the waitress didn't top off his water that he was barely sipping on fast enough. It came to a head when my stepfather ordered a steak medium well. It came back medium well, and for some reason he changed his mind that he wanted it medium rare while it was cooking, and they didn't read his mind, so he gave attitude, as did my mum. They jumped really quickly to demanding free stuff. I'm an adult, and this may be the first time they realized it. I interrupted in front of the server, and said something like, "Really? This is what you're doing? That's what you ordered?" I turned to the server and said, "We do not need anything comped." I then pulled out my wallet and handed her my card and said, "This is for the bill. We'll happily wrap up with what we have here. I'm very sorry for their behavior. You're doing great." Then the line that stung them so deep, they still bring it up years later. I was taught to treat people nicely, a lesson that seems to be forgotten. Thank you. They turned red. The server walked away. I looked down and cut my steak, and didn't say a word. They were so flabbergasted that the meal was virtually silent, except me asking my stepfather how his steak was a few minutes later. I signed the check, gave a big tip, and we walked out and said goodbyes. They've been nicer to servers each time that we've been out since. My mum has been this person regularly throughout my life, but I do have one positive story with it. She and I went to eat at Portillo's when I was a teenager, and we sat in the back of the restaurant where it was more private, so we could eat in peace. About 10 minutes into our meal, 2 people came into the empty area and sit down 2 tables away from us. Turns out it was a manager and an employee that was getting written up. The manager was being a complete arsehat towards the employee, criticizing and belittling them. My mum put down her food and walked over and started yelling at the manager for being such an asshole. She went on a rant about how rude and wrong it was for him to do this in front of the public 2 tables away from customers and really let him have it. She demanded the phone number of the manager above him and left after she received it. I was pretty embarrassed at the time, but as I got older, I realized that she was standing up for that employee and how wrong that manager really was. I'm not 100% sure what she did with that phone number because I lived with my dad and I had to go home after that meal. Props to her. Also, yum, Portillo's. Right, so, my mum and me went shopping and she dropped a melon on the way out. She then claimed it was bruised and demanded a full refund. When she refused, she shouted at customer service and demanded the manager. I just sat there with a "kill me now" expression on my face. After, one of the customer service employees gave me a chocolate bar, so 7-year-old me was happy. My mother did this in restaurants non-stop growing up. She would demand to see the manager because my burger, which I ordered medium, had some pink in it. I might be late, but my dad once asked the guy at the Verizon wireless store to give him his social security number because he asked for my dad's. My dad walked out afterwards with some stranger's SS number on a post-it. I was a silent bystander because I really wanted my first phone. I hope that guy didn't actually give your dad his SSN. Lol. I was with my parents on vacation, and the hotel put charges on the bill by accident. My mum marched into the front desk and demanded to see the manager. There was a long line, but she cut right in front of it. The manager wasn't very helpful, probably because she was rude, so my mum went to all the other customers in line and told them that the hotel was a scam and they were ripping us off with fake charges. She made a scene. The hotel called the police, and we were escorted off the premises by actual cops. I died inside. About once a month, my dad gets drunk and calls various customer service centers demanding stuff. Once he finally gets off the phone, frequently 45 plus minutes later, he spends the next few days telling us about how he slew the customer service dragon. And boy, people sure don't appreciate their customers nowadays, blah blah blah. No duh, Dad. You're being an asshole. No one appreciates that. If you've worked for DirecTV customer service anytime since 1996, I apologize on behalf of my dad. Another story for y'all. I also remember one time, McDonald's was having some kind of 2-for-1 breakfast sandwich deal going on, where the total was about $3. He gets his breakfast, drives 25 minutes to work, realizes he's missing one of the sandwiches, and proceeds to call McDonald's customer support every evening after work for a week to complain about his wasted $1.50. They gave him apologies, and they gave him coupons, but he just wanted to yell. My father consistently returns food to grocery stores when he's unsatisfied with the quality. The worst is when he returns the 2-pound bricks of cheddar cheese because they went moldy, quote-unquote, before they should have. My mother is a nightmare with customer service, even with the fact that I, her daughter, works in customer service and deals with people like her on the daily. So many incidents stick out in my mind, but one that really embarrassed me was when we were at Walmart. The stocker was struggling and dropped their price scanner thing on the ground. I was going to go help her gather the thing she was struggling with when my mum came out like a bat out of hell and yelled, "You know you should pick that up. People could trip." And then she darted off with the cart. I was so embarrassed, I just walked away in shame. And when I pointed it out to my mum, the girl dropped it on accident. She said, "Well, she should be more careful." Okay. When I was 6, my mum took my brothers and I to Golden Corral for dinner. She went up to the buffet, got a steak, and came back to the table. She's an avid A1 steak sauce fan and cannot, I repeat, cannot eat steak without it. She poured out the A1 onto her plate, tasted it, and was instantly horrified. She proceeded to pour out the Golden Corral steak sauce right next to the A1, and it matched perfectly. Outraged, she called over a waitress and eventually the manager, showing them her little experiment and how she had exposed the great steak sauce fraud of '06. My brothers and I were scarred for the rest of our lives, and I still have nightmares about it. To be fair, Golden Corral shouldn't be putting lies and trickery in the A1 bottle. To be fair, what the f*** did that steak do to anyone to deserve either of those abominations? To be fair, it's Golden Corral steak. It was ruined before his mum got it. Great steak sauce fraud of '06. I read the Wikipedia article about that.